Hello there, and welcome back to the SWTVC podcast. This episode, we're going to be looking at Finish the 96. My name is Evan Fries, or as you may know me, Mile High Ground, and I'm joined today by my SWTVC cohort, John, aka The Vintage Concepts, and
there.
Special guest, Bossks Bounty himself, Tim.
Hi, how you doing?
You know, I know you need no introduction. Anybody listening to this show, I'm going to say 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, if they're listening to this, they know who you are. And I just want to get out of the way, though, just in case we snag any, Hasbro's dream passerbys instead of just hardcore collectors. Tim, would you mind just kind of giving us a little rundown about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So obviously I'm the person responsible for the YouTube channel Bossks Bounty. It's been going near on 3 years now, and it centers around pretty much the vintage collection. That's my main passion. I grew up in the 80s as a child, so I naturally go towards 3.75. And yeah, I just wanted to start a channel really and talk about my hobby. It wasn't anything sort of special or anything. It's just kind of what I do. And it's great fun and get to meet great people like you guys. So,
well, I really appreciate that. Again, you're so fast with with getting content to upload it. I'm
yeah. I mean, obviously I like to be on the pulse with what's going on, and it's just good that we've got these sort of people with Instagram accounts that manage to get the news. You know, like Jason from Yak Face, and that Star Wars figurine was a very good one. You know, it's good to get the news out there. So yeah,
For sure.
pleasure to have you here. Really appreciate you doing this with us today.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Let's see. So let's kind of dive into then the meat and potatoes of the day. So I'm just kind of here to learn and enjoy you two talking about some stuff for the most part. John is going to be the expert today, especially coming around with the Finish 96 stuff. He's been doing a series of infographics over on the SWTVC Instagram. With stuff that is either updated, not updated, or just flat out missing from the vintage collection regarding the original Kenner 96. The vintage collection has many different goals, covers more than 4 decades of entertainment, and serves numerous different fans, from the hardcore to the casual. In addition to creating high-quality figures from new movies and TV shows, the line also looks to update classic figures. These classic Kenner 96, and we've seen many released. Hasbro recently recommitted to finishing the 96 with the most recent Fan First Friday, and they have several planned for release this year. But as I said, we're keeping tabs on how far they've come and how far they have to go. So, John, I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to you.
All right. So, yeah, today we're going to be going over kind of the different categories, which ones have been updated, which ones were updated before the vintage collection in the original trilogy, saga, and 30th anniversary collections, which ones have almost kind of been updated. There's a lot of gray area here, so there's surprisingly a lot to talk about. And then a few that still have yet to be updated in the line. First of all, actually, what does finishing the 96 mean to you, Tim? Is it something that's important to you as a longtime fan?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, can I just say that the work that you do, John, with those slides on Instagram is amazing.
Oh, thank you so much.
It really does look good. And the whole hashtag Finish the 96 thing, it's definitely needed. And yeah, to me, it means everything, to be honest, because as I mentioned, I was born in the mid to late 70s, and I grew up with the Kenner figures. And for them to have modern versions of those figures on the vintage cards, that means everything to me.
Right.
I'm not going to say that I would stop collecting once they finish the 96, but it's an important part of it for me. But then again, I do like to see the other films like Revenge of the Sith figures and things like that come onto those cards. I think it's a nice continuation of the line, but
for sure.
I think, yeah, for me, very, very important that they give us the best possible version of the character on a vintage style card.
For sure. And there's a lot of different they've mentioned updating teams lately. Like they're doing all the Rogue One teams. Yeah. So we still need Baze and we still need Bodhi and maybe some of the other villains and background characters of that movie.
Yeah, that'd be helpful, wouldn't it?
So there's a lot of different sort of checklists they can do, but Finish the 96 is a very important one. And yeah, it kind of speaks to bringing the best of the vintage line and the best of the modern era with the new paint and sculpting and articulation that we all know and love in the vintage collection today. So I'd say there's 9 figures from A New Hope. There's 9 figures from A New Hope that have been updated in the vintage collection, which I'll start with R5-D4, Darth Vader, Chewbacca, R2-D2, Luke Skywalker, X-Wing pilot, Jawa, and Power Droid. Then those are the 7 that I would say are pretty well definitive. Would you agree with those?
Yeah.
And the Power Droid is kind of in that weird area where the vintage card didn't match the vintage figure.
Yeah.
So the card was the plain grayish brownish gonk droid from the Sandcrawler, but the figure was the blue and white, more colorful one from the Lars Homestead.
Yeah.
Which I was very excited to see that figure come out last year because that was the first time Hasbro has updated that figure in the modern line. They've done plenty of gonk droids over the years, but that was the first Lars Homestead one. So these are the nitty gritty things that really excite me about the line still. And then so 2 of those 9 are Ponda Baba Walrus Man and the Imperial Navy Commander, which those cards were updated for the modern line.
Yeah.
The Imperial Navy Commander, his name was changed from Death Squad Commander. He had a few vintage names, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
For some reason in 2012 when that figure came out, they changed the face of the actor, which at the time they said it was a legal issue, so it just kind of looks like a strange Photoshop job. And I should know about strange Photoshop jobs because I do kit bashes of them all the time. But weirdly enough, when Gentle Giant did an update to that figure, and when the Black Series had an update to that figure just a couple years ago, they used the original actor's face.
Oh, right.
So frankly, I wouldn't mind an update to that in the vintage collection, and we can add a photo reel on the figure, maybe. I assume they're going to get around to doing the photo reel on that at some point, so that would be a nice thing to update.
They did the photo reel on the Black Series version.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then as far as Ponda Baba, he's originally Walrus Man. The original vintage figure had a very airbrushed look.
Yeah.
And the new one has an image from the film. What are your feelings on that? Do you think they should be updated, or should they kind of stick exactly to the original?
Well, the Walrus Man one's quite funny, really, because obviously the original card for that was almost like a drawing or a painting. It's, it's probably even out of date back then, really, compared to what they could do. But yeah, this is where it gets into that sort of fine line, you see, because if we take the most recent one that was announced of Paplu, and that's obviously got the Romba image, but that's how it was back in the day. Now, I know some people would like that to be corrected and think that the vintage collection should be a correction of all the Kenner mistakes, maybe. And although I partially agree with that, I kind of want the sort of mistakes kept, really. I'm just one of these people that just, for the nostalgic factor, I'm all for having a modern, updated, super articulated figure, but on the artwork that was originally done in the Kenner days. So you've got the best of both worlds then.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's happened a few times, hasn't it? With for the Emperor's Royal Guard, for example, they updated the image with that one. And for that one, I don't think there was really any reason to do that. I think the vintage card of that one's absolutely fine, but I can understand the Walrus Man one because it is a pretty poor image. And I think if maybe they'd brought that out, a lot of people would have said, what on earth are you doing, sort of thing? What sort of image is that? But to keep it real and to keep it, vintage, I mean, it is called the Vintage Collection, so I don't know. Me personally, I would, I would have preferred it if they'd kept it, but,
I think, maybe that they could have chosen a film out image that was a little bit closer to his position or something, or done, because like nowadays on figures like Echo on figures like Fives or Hondo, they use artwork, or even the Incinerator Trooper, they use artwork, but it's more realistic artwork, so maybe they could have done a better looking drawing that doesn't look like it was airbrushed onto the side of a sweet 70s van or something like that.
I know, John, in some of your mock-ups for Clone Wars in particular, using, animated stills from the show itself.
Right.
I was thinking about like the Ahsoka card back where that was very much a piece of art compared to a photo. Same with Dr. Aphra when she came out in 2018.
Right, yeah.
That was, because there's no live action reference for that. every time I think, oh yeah, using art on a card back wouldn't necessarily work, I think that there are a few every once in a while where there is just a purely original art based card back, as opposed to any kind of photograph from live action or an attempt at live action. Sorry for derailing.
No. And then, I mean, on the same line, like some of the Clone Wars figures are just, Hayden Christensen or Ewan McGregor with a photoshopped armor on their shoulders or that sort of thing. So I wonder with Ahsoka, will it be, a younger Rosario Dawson image now with Photoshop? I'm interested to see what that looks like. I'll say one thing about the R2-D2 figure. The vintage figure was very clean, and the card back is very clean, but the one they put out in 2019, it was a repack of the Build-A-Droid mold, but it was very dirty.
Yeah.
And he looks like he's been through the Tatooine desert or through the X-Wing battle or something.
Yeah, that was a strange one. I remember when I got that figure or it was announced, because obviously the R2-D2 was a big one that was missing. And when the figure was announced, I was like, oh man, why is he dirty? And he almost looked like the Dagobah version. That's from the photos, it looked like a greeny sort of dirt, like a swampy dirt. But I think it is supposed to represent after the Battle of Yavin, where he's essentially been hit. So yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because obviously with that card back, ideally I would like a clean R2, and I actually repacked one, recarded one.
Oh yeah,
I did that with the just with the figure from the Last Jedi line off that card back. I just took that figure right out and put it straight in and glued it back down.
That's awesome. So in terms of R2-D2, there was another one in the vintage line. It wasn't part of the original 96 technically, but it was included in that Droid Factory playset, where you could build sort of the original Build-A-Droid situation. And that was the only one in the vintage days that had the third leg. Obviously now almost every R2 in the modern line has the third leg, so it's nothing particularly special. But do you think those sort of figures are things that need to be updated as well, so to speak? Like the other day I did him on a Sandcrawler card, since the Droid Factory playset is kind of a Sandcrawler inspired set. Those are sort of the weird things where it's like we don't need it, but it would, it could be a fun thing if they ever revisit that set, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. I mean, what card would they put that on? Because the Droid Factory one never actually had a card, did it? Yeah. So it was like a pack-in baggy type thing. I think when we're talking about obviously the 96 are the 96 carded figures. And then you've got the ones on top, which would be quite nice, which I'm sure we'll get into with Blue Snag and what have you. But I think it'd be a nice sort of nod to that sort of thing, but I'm not sure how they would do it really.
The next category is figures that were updated in the original trilogy and saga collections and 30th anniversary collections. And there's 6 of those, which are Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia Organa, Han Solo, Bin Obi-Wan Kenobi, Sand People or Tusken Raider, and then Greedo. So I think most of those need an update. I think Greedo is pretty good as is.
I was just about to say probably all of them apart from Greedo. And I know even people out there have problems with the Greedo with the jacket and what have you. But the first ones you mentioned, they all need an update. The only one that's probably passable maybe is the Han Solo. I think that's still a pretty good figure, but with the techniques they've got today, they could make a really, really good Han Solo.
Yeah, and that Han, they've used his legs on like almost every Han figure that they've done since, and they've done so many. Even the indoor Han that's supposedly coming out again, I believe uses at least some of the same parts. So here we are 17 years later, still getting the same Han legs. And he's a little bit skinny in that figure for me.
He is, yeah.
Which I know he was thin at the time, but it was before he bulked up for Indiana Jones and everything. But
I'm honestly still flabbergasted that it's 2021 and we don't have definitive versions of Farm Boy Luke, of Ben Kenobi, of A New Hope, Princess Leia, of Han, or it's like these icons. Those seems like slam dunks. I mean, even in the 40th anniversary of A New Hope back in 2017, they could have done gangbusters just offering a pack. Instead, we got the titanium in-action figures of like, a little metal die cast with 2 POA or something.
And Obi-Wan was also updated in Legacy Collection in 2009. And that figure has better elbows and knees and ankles than the vintage one.
Yeah, that's actually not too bad a figure, that Ben Kenobi.
I think that might be a candidate where I'd prefer if they did a new head for that one and then give it photoreal.
Yeah, the head on the 5 POAs a decent likeness.
Yeah.
Yes, that is the 5POA. Not that I am an advocate for more 5POA. I'm not. I don't enjoy 5POA. But I did love some of the figures that came out in the tail end of the Force Link era, like for Last Jedi and Solo, and that the Obi-Wan that came out. That was a pretty darn fine figure. I enjoyed it a lot, especially because, he could hold the lightsaber with both hands, and the head sculpt is nice on that, because even the Black Series, Ben Kenobi, the head is a little off. Again, sorry for just jumping in with random tidbits.
On that note, when we talk about updating the images and, updating the figure, do you guys have any do you have any desire for vintage colored figures in the modern line, or is that something that should just kind of be kept in retro or kept in the vintage days?
I'd prefer it over carbonized, but I don't really care for either right now. They're not a priority for me. Yeah,
I agree. I would prefer them over carbonized or credit collection type repaints. I would prefer them to do something newish. But I personally think that you should keep all of that stuff out of the vintage collection. To be honest, you've got the retro collection. They're your retro figures, and if you want to do modern style versions of the retro figures, which sounds a bit odd, doesn't it? Yeah, keep them out of the vintage collection line.
That's fair. There is one figure that I would like to see in Kinner inspired colors, which it would be Boba Fett.
Yes,
because in between his white prototype armor and what we saw in Empire Strikes Back, he had the more colorful armor with one red gauntlet, one yellow gauntlet. Which is the image that they used on the Star Wars card. But I'd like to see them do that in the realistic version. There's so many new Boba Fetts that they have to get to.
But that would be a good convention exclusive or something,
for sure.
A bit like that multicolored Darth Vader they did for the retro collection. And also they did it for the 6-inch, didn't they, with the Boba Fett. So once you've got that new Boba Fett sculpt, you could essentially do the holiday special one again, or you could do the vintage Kenner one. But as I say, I think it should be separate to the like a one-off thing.
Yeah. So that also brings us to the next category, which is figures that have been in vintage collection that were originally in the Star Wars line but were updated in vintage collection on other movie card backs, which are C-3PO, who has been on Empire Strikes Back card, the Stormtrooper, who has been on both Empire and Jedi cards, and Boba Fett, who has also been on Empire and Return of the Jedi cards. And Boba was released on a Star Wars card with the retro rocket firing figure about 10 years ago.
Yes, he was.
Are those things that you guys think need to be on Star Wars cards? Like C-3PO, for instance, the vintage one he's Empire Strikes Back specific because he has the gold foot instead of the silver foot, which is a very small nitpick thing. But
if I can jump in here, 1,000,000% they need to do that. These are two of the first 12, not just of the 96. So they are big gaps for me, and the lack of a Vac metalized C-3PO on a Star Wars card is a big one. For me. I just think the C-3PO that we've got VCO6, it's a poor figure, I've got to say, and they've re-released it. It was in the Black Series. That's a huge one for me. And I've said this before on some of my shows and whatever, they made quite a big point when they talked about the exclusive child that came with the Razor Crest.
With the Vac Metal
pram. It's got a Vac metalized
Yeah.
pram. He made a big point of that. So why, if you can do that, why can't you just, the Death Star droid as well?
I would wonder, because I remember they were talking about Vac Metal for environmental reasons or something, and then I thought that when they announced it for the pram for the child, that was when they thought they were only going to move 10,000 units of the crest, and then now they have to make 28,000 of 26,000 of them.
Because the environmental issue came up. I interviewed Steve Evans right before Force Awakens came out. And I asked about, there wasn't any Vac Metal in the line for quite some time at that point, and there still hasn't been, other than the child pram. So and I don't know, and I've heard that other people have issues with articulation with Vac Metal, like if the joints rub up against each other, that can be a thing. So I think maybe it only works on limited articulation figures, like they did it on the 2004 C-3PO in the original trilogy collection vintage line, which is not a good sculpt, and it's just kind of weird. And even that one was on an Empire card.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a good example of how it should be done. There was quite a good C-3PO that had the Salacious Crumb attacking him, and the eye popped out. And I'm not even sure if that is Vac Metalized. I don't know whether there's another technique that they can do that has the same effect.
Right.
But ultimately, that's the sort of gold that I would like my C-3PO to be in. If they're ever going to be bringing them out on a Star Wars card. And I suspect that that's probably why we haven't seen him or the Death Star droid yet, because, I think if you're going to do the Death Star droid on that vintage card, if you just put the one from that 3-pack in there, I'm not sure if that's going to really work.
It can't be a dull droid.
Yeah, we can talk about the Death Star droid now, I guess. He's one of the figures that has never been on a vintage collection card. So like you said, they took the Legacy Collection Build-A-Droid silver figure and put him out in the 3-pack with R5-D4 and the Power Droid. Like, I still like the look of the Power of the Force. I have a whole lineup over here, but I have the Power of the Force Death Star droid, which was shiny black Vac Metal, I believe.
Yeah.
And that one it's a strange case because there's 2 droids in the film, 2 RA7 droids in the film. There's the one in the Sandcrawler, which is kind of a rusty silver.
Yeah.
And then the actual Death Star droid on the Death Star was black that walks by Luke, Han, and Chewie.
Yeah.
So that's the Death Star droid, but the Sandcrawler droid was the one that was updated in the line.
But
is that a case where we need multiple releases to check that box?
This is the same situation with the Power Droid, isn't it? Because the card was always, I believe, the one on the Sandcrawler. But it was always the little droid that you got back in the day was the Homestead droid, little blue thing with antennas and what have you. So this is the same. I think personally for me, one would do a shiny silver one on that card. That would be enough for me. Although I do like that black one, I must admit that could be another thing.
Yeah, they could do a couple different cards. And yeah, I think the figure itself is pretty good, the 2009 Legacy Collection figure. Disney did a more articulated version in their Droid Factory parts bins and in their color changing set, with the same colors we've gotten from Hasbro, being silver, black, and blue. The one that goes from black to blue. Yeah, I don't know if they share molds sometimes across each other.
Yeah, I think some of those Disney cards recently have actually had Hasbro logo on them. It's a weird relationship they've got there, isn't it?
Yeah, because like Disney borrowed the molds from Hasbro.
Yeah.
And then for the first Build-A-Droids were identical to the Hasbro ones. And then they took the wires off because the left and right legs were getting mixed up all the time.
Yeah.
Back to the figures that have been updated to another movie. In terms of the Stormtrooper, they just did, in the Carbon Freezing Chamber set, they took, I believe, one of the removable helmet, like Luke or Han figures, and they added the new Rogue One helmet on top of it.
It's the same as the Han, I believe. The same figure as the Han.
So it's not quite as nice as the Rogue One version, but the Rogue One version isn't really accurate to A New Hope 100%, with a lack of holster and everything. Is that a figure you guys think they can just put on the Star Wars card, or do they need some more updates for that?
Evan?
I haven't opened that one, actually. So
I was waiting to see what you'd say, Tim, but I was going to say, for me as kind of a pleb, I honestly would be okay with a reissue of VC 140, but on a New Hope card, a Star Wars card, just because I absolutely adore that figure in general. I think Hasbro can get a lot of mileage out of it, even though it's not accurate, entirely accurate, but it's kind of at a certain point for me, it's like, all right, how inaccurate is it compared to other things? I think it would be awesome if they could find a way to slap a holster on a VC 140 and then throw it on a Star Wars card. And then I would buy many.
I'd be happy with that.
How about you, Tim?
Well, it's funny, this one, because I was actually, when I was at Toy Fair, I was listening to Sam, who's no longer the designer, but he was at the time. I believe his name was Sam. He was being interviewed by somebody, and I was sort of like standing there overhearing what he was saying. And he was a really knowledgeable guy, and he was talking about the differences between the New Hope Stormtrooper and the Rogue One Stormtrooper. And so I think somebody asked him the same question, why can't you just put that figure on Earth? And I think he said, basically the nerds out there, which we all are really, but
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen to this podcast. You'll find out.
Would know the difference. And I don't think it even just comes down to the holster. I mean, I think the one that comes in the playset, I believe the holster is on the opposite side of his leg, I think. So from Empire to Star Wars, it changes sides. So there's that. But I think also there is like slight differences with the helmet and slight differences with the armor and things like that. So it's just how deep do you really want to go with it? I'm with you, Evan, though. I think, you know, if you could just slap a holster onto that Rogue One, I'd be happy with that. That would be enough for me.
Yeah.
You know, it's just about getting that first 12 card out there, really.
So, and before we do the other figures that haven't been in Vintage Collection, I wanted to go to the alternate cards that haven't been updated. And I know, Tim, that's a focus of your collection, right? Some of the alternate film mounts that they added when they repacked them for Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, I love those. Yeah, so, you know, you've got Gunner Luke, Yoda, Chewie. So the Chewbacca that they released, it was quite a funny one, that one, because the original promo images that we had of that Chewbacca, it had with the split hairdo. And everyone was like, you can't put that on a Star Wars card. But when we actually got the figure, it did have the slick back hair. But of course, I think it was the red and black box 3.75 inch Black Series did have the Return of the Jedi Chewie. So it'd be quite nice to have that one on that sort of Return of the Jedi card. You know, there's other ones that they could do, but I think there's some really important ones that they need to do. And the big one they're ticking off, which is the Boba Fett.
Mm-hmm. For sure, with that skiff battle background.
Yes, the desert scene.
And supposedly, and that was another one where they updated it to look, you know, they zoomed in because the original one had some airbrushed Ponda Baba style legs and a cape.
Yes.
And so we got alternate images of the new one actually from Star Wars Figurin, but I couldn't really tell if that was a fan made one or if that was sent from Hasbro with the more zoomed out version in Vintage Collection. We still haven't even seen the actual Boba Fett figure, even though it ships in the next like 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
But so some of the three A New Hope film outs that were changed were Luke on the Millennium Falcon gunner card, Ben Kenobi with his hood up and the close up with his lightsaber, blue lightsaber finally, and then Han Solo on the Death Star escape card. So those could technically be different versions of the figures because like we haven't actually gotten a Millennium Falcon gunner Luke since 1998. We got the Death Star escape one in 2011 with the Stormtrooper belt, but we don't have with the headphones with the Millennium Falcon headset.
Yeah.
And we got Han and Chewie with the headset. So frankly, I'd like to see Luke on that card with the gunner headset. I think I'd prefer the original ones get updated in Vintage Collection first, but I do want to see the alternate cards of these guys.
So would you not be happy with a brand new Luke Skywalker sculpt, for example, coming out on that classic card, and then they just repack him onto, you know, would you want a scene specific figure for that gunner Luke?
I would, because Luke in particular hasn't been done in like a modern super articulated version.
Yeah.
You hear that, Hasbro? More Lukes.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there was quite a while where there was, you know, dozens of Tatooine Lukes, and you know they kind of overdid it. But it's been quite a while since we got one, other than the metal one a couple years ago. I'd say match the card and do a Tatooine one first, and then do the Millennium Falcon Gunner one second. That's my opinion on that.
Yeah. So like Han Solo, he's got an alternative card, hasn't he? So when they do these alternate cards, do you want the movie still to be Star Wars, or because it was released in Kenner days on a Return of the Jedi card, would you know, because the image doesn't fit the film, does it? It's just that's the way they marketed it because that's the film that was out at the time that those cards were produced, you know?
Yeah, and that kind of fits like when they released C-3PO on the Star Wars image with the Empire Strikes Back name.
Yeah.
Film name, whatever you want to call that. So I think it would be fun to have them on the Return of the Jedi card. That they can kind of do like they did in 2011 with the Revenge and Return figures.
Yeah.
Where they had a case with both. So I think, like you say, bring it forward all the way into Vintage Collection, update the figure, and update the film out with the original Star Wars card. I would like to see these on the Star Wars card personally.
Yeah.
Instead of Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
I mean, do both, but I'd like to have Star Wars as an option.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because that's like the utopia. We're never going to get that, but it'd be nice.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, I personally just would be happy with all new sculpts of the figures. So Leia, Han, Luke, and Ben Kenobi on those original cards. But then maybe if they did like a chase thing like they used to do with the foils, and like you say with the revenge
I was just
cards,
thinking about that.
where you had the same figure but on the Gunner Luke card. I mean, because would they do actually two different figures? Probably not. So just to get that card, I would be still happy to have that new definitive Luke farm boy on both cards. But I could see what you mean. It would be nice to have the Gunner Luke on the Gunner Luke card as well.
Yeah, just because in that, like Obi-Wan, I think they could do the same figure on both cards.
Oh, absolutely. But this may be sacrilege, John. I prefer the alternate card for Obi-Wan with the hood up and the lightsaber. The yellow lightsaber card is just, it's kind of too goofy for me. But if they were to, have Obi-Wan packed 2 per case or 3 per case, and there was 2 of the hood up version and 1 of the yellow lightsaber version, I would go driving around to find that guy.
Yeah, the yellow lightsaber one looks like he's kind of like falling back or something.
Yeah.
And turning on it. He's waking up in the middle of the night to get a glass of water, and he's turning his flashlight on, and he's tripping over his bedstand or something. Not the most dignified photo.
No.
See, I don't really understand why Hasbro don't do more of this sort of thing, because people that collect the vintage collection are clearly carded collectors that obviously are, people want the loose figures as well, but there's a lot of people that will just buy them to not open them. There's people like me that will buy 2.
Me too, Tim. Me too.
To open one and keep one carded. But I do like the card art, and I do like collecting them. So, to have these chase variants, if that's what you want to call them, back in the original run when you had those revenge cards and foil cards, that's the fun of it for me. That's part of the fun. So I would like for them to do that. I really don't know why they haven't done that since. It's a bit of an odd one. And those 4 figures there are perfect candidates for it, really, because all of those except Leia have got a alternate image.
That what I'm taking from that is that a fool and his money are easily parted. And
yeah, well,
but who's the more foolish, the fool or the fool who follows it?
I'm the fool who follows. That's for sure.
So there's 2 more figures to talk about in the Star Wars line, technically 3, being Hammerhead and Snaggletooth. So for Hammerhead, now known as Moma Nadon, we've gotten a 1997 version who was changed a little bit in 2002 with the Cantina bar, and then the final version in Saga Collection in 2006, which I like that figure, but it's not really articulated to today's standards. Do you think we need an all-new version of him?
Yeah, 100%. And that's probably why we haven't got him.
It'd be a huge tooling investment. I really like the look of this 2006
it looks great,
figure. He can't really sit down. I mean, I sort of don't think every single figure, this might be blasphemous, I don't think every single figure needs, 20 points of articulation, needs to be doing jumps and splits.
He needs to be able to sit down though, doesn't he?
Yeah, I'd like for them to be able to do what they do in the movie. And literally all I'm asking for is him to sit down, and which the current one can't do. I don't know if they can leverage the old sculpt or something. They can do an all-new one that would look even better, but we haven't gotten many Cantina aliens lately. The last one was Mosep Benid in 2015, the last all-new one. And we're about to get Snaggletooth, which we'll talk about in a second. But there's not a lot of completely unmade Cantina aliens. The Lutrillians, the Othello, and Sola Mahal from the Holiday Special, and what's the other? Onelco.
Tonica Sisters.
Yeah, the Tonica Sisters, of course, which, they've been tied up supposedly in rights issues for years, but one of them said they could do it, and one of them said you can't do it. But then she passed away.
I think Victoria just had an update on that not too long ago. I guess it's not a rights issue anymore. I think it's all settled.
She mentioned it on my live stream. Yeah, it's something to do. I think it's in Hasbro's court, really. I think the lady in question is ready. She's ready to sign. It's just,
is the juice worth the squeeze, as they say?
Yes, it is.
It is for us.
For us, is it?
Please.
But so Hammerhead Moma Nadon is a very he's a classic Cantina character, and I think he would do well at retail. I think we're all interested in having another one, so I think that's one they can get out and would do very well. And then Snaggletooth, in the film A New Hope, there's 2 Snaggletooth. There's Takil and Zutton. And like a lot of the other Cantina characters, they did the same mask twice, same costume twice, and then they would mess with the hair or add a scarf, which is exactly what happened here. So Takil is a little bit of Snivian pattern baldness going on, and a scarf and a bigger hump in his back. In the original line, of course, they took a black and white image of one of those characters and they made it into the taller blue Snaggletooth in the Sears exclusive Cantina Adventure set, and then a couple other 2-packs. And they added a really cool arrowhead belt buckle, which, according to Tom Spina, who's sort of a Cantina expert, was taken from a business card that the Kenner designer just happened to like.
Classic.
Yeah. So then when they made the holiday special, they actually took that belt buckle and added it to the Zutmore costume, who is in the holiday special, the shorter Snivian, who's actually like short and wearing a red outfit. And then that figure was made based on the holiday special in the Star Wars line in the Kenner days. It's a very complicated, weird history.
Yeah.
And so now, in a couple months, Hasbro is putting out the 2012 Zutton figure again on a sort of 96 adjacent card, as they called it, with one of those new film outs that's looks like a drawing or a painting of some kind. It doesn't quite scratch the itch, but obviously it's no tooling budget for them because they already paid for that 9 years ago. Do you guys want to see a blue Snaggletooth? Do you want to see a new
That's another
Zutmore?
I'd say that's another example of it's an easy way to squeeze money out of me is just do variants of things that you have, or even I don't know. I'd be into it. I would like to see more accurate to the Kenner one. I'm not a huge fan of the concept of 96 adjacent. Check the box done.
It's strange because they made Tequil in 1999 in the Cantina Aliens 3-pack with his nice big hunchback right there. And then a couple years later, they did the shorter. They called him or her Zutton at the time, even though in the holiday special, B. Arthur calls him or her Zutmore. And they play musical chairs with these characters' names all the time. And then they added the Ponda Baba legs and arms to him and painted him blue for a Kmart set in 2004. And then, the 2012 Zutton or Snaggletooth figure.
With this Snaggletooth thing, it's like, I'm old school. I wanted the card to say Snaggletooth to at least in brackets, maybe. I don't know. I'm not really too fussed about which figure they put on. It's about just sort of ticking Snaggletooth off in one of his forms. I know they mentioned adjacent to the 96. Maybe they'll bring out the others at some point. I just would have preferred them to give, as I say, just to have kept the card art, even though maybe it doesn't match the figure. But I know other people like these things to be corrected. So I don't know. I guess there's two camps, isn't there?
This is the first Cantina Alien they've released on a single card since 2015. So I'm kind of, beggars can't be choosers, I guess, at this point. But
that's the TVC collector motto.
Yes.
And I think that brings us to a pretty good stopping point for this episode. Come back later this week as we continue chatting with Tim and move on to the Empire Strikes Back portion of the original 96. Again, huge thank you to Tim for being with us on this episode, and be sure to find him at Bossks Bounty on YouTube or Instagram for excellent collecting content, and major props to John for his exhaustive research on this subject. For a look at the figures and material covered in this episode, be sure to check out the SWTVC post on Instagram under the hashtag #FinishThe96 banner. And also, be sure to follow John over at The Vintage Concepts on Instagram. He does killer card mock-ups. Here's the little annoying but obligatory part that we have to tack on at the end of the episode. If you enjoyed the podcast, please consider giving it a nice little rating and review, and be sure to share and subscribe. Any little thing helps, and we really appreciate this community. As always, I've been your host, Evan, or Mile High Ground on Instagram. And remember, back TVC, balance the scales, finish the 96, keep 375 alive, and the Force will be with you. Always.